Britney Spears is famous because she was a superstar, and now they've done there's now a documentary about how somehow um, she hasn't been able to live her own life for 13 years, which we're not going to talk about Britney Spears. I don't know anything about her. A million people are talking about it, but it's stunning to me. I mean, a person who's had a great degree of success is now in a situation where if you take either side of the story, either she's incapable of managing her own life, or somehow her father has insinuated himself into controlling her life in a way which he's doing for whatever purposes, money, psychology, psychological control. We're not declaring ourselves in either way on that story, but how's that possible? That a capable, talented person hasn't been able to emerge into adulthood. And we're going to take as our point of departure somebody named Mara Wilson wrote an essay about what the lesson is from Britney Spears. Mara Wilson was an actress from age 5. She was in Matilda and Mrs. Doubtfire. I don't know, what does that say to you already compared to Britney Spears? She's trying to draw a parallel between herself and Britney Spears, but the fact that she played in Matilda and Mrs. Doubtfire as a child, how does that come across to you? She played a child. She's saying that she was also sexualized because people would say to her from a very young age, do you have a boyfriend? Okay, that's stupid to say to a child.
Yeah.
However, people have been saying that stupid thing to children forever, you know.
Brittney was playing an adult. That child was playing a child.
Right. And so she tries to draw a parallel between her experience and she begins by describing her 13th birthday. She'd been acting since she was 5. She happened to be in Toronto and she was doing media, and she complained about it. So there's two sides to that. And the Canadian media, for some reason, went off on her, called her a brat. I mean, most people who are listening to this are going to say, and you could see this young girl, 13, she lives a fairly good life. Okay. They make her do media tours, whatever. Who decided that? And on the other hand, most people would say, you don't have to cut the girl down because she's complaining that on her birthday, she's in Toronto rather than in her home doing media, and somebody might say, what's the matter with their parents? Who puts a 13-year-old girl on the road? We're not going to come out. I'm not going to come out on that. In our third part, I'm going to talk about what it means if you have a child with some exceptional skill who's already achieved some success.
Yep.
And she differentiates how she's a regular human being, how she was different from Britney Spears. I don't know exactly where she's going in this essay, but here's the core of it. I'd been trained to be normal. I shared a bedroom with my sister. I went to public school. Nobody would touch the money I made until I was 18. I don't know. That sounds like the formula to me. And so, going back to those parents, she mentions her father in the essay, who you might say, well, who are they putting this girl on the road from the age of 5 and then 13? But on the other hand, they tried to enable her to lead a normal life. She's sharing a bedroom with her sister. They're not spending all of her money. They're putting it in some whatever kind of fiduciary. And, she probably is living a pretty decent life now. Here's what she said. When the Brat media came out, my father was sympathetic. I could tell he didn't think what they were saying about me was fair. step one, but he reminded me to be more positive and gracious in interviews. So I almost see that as a therapeutic model. Okay,
Yeah.
you take, how does that tie into how you do helpful things with children?
Oh, even beyond just how I do help, I just in general, what could be more practical and beneficial than saying, you know what, you're right, that wasn't fair. That's listening. That's really like active listening. You said something on a whim and people are taking that out of context. Well, that's not fair. That's the people shouldn't do that. Then again, it happened and you're privileged to be able to be doing this, and you should probably keep working to deserve that privilege. And that's what people do when they're living balanced, healthy lives. They take the good with the bad and try to figure out how to.
You're making a pretty good living, and it's helping our whole family.
Yeah.
Certain things come along with that job. People
Right.
want to see you smile in an interview. They don't want to see you complaining compared, to
You'll face,
everybody
if you
else.
want to keep with the career, you'll face something like this again. You can't control other people, but you can control your reactions to them.
So it's a two-step therapy process where you say, you're right. I understand where you're coming from. Obviously, it's his daughter. He loves her.
Yeah.
But, there's a lesson to be learned here. And, let's emphasize what's positive in this.
That's what I would tell my daughter, Hadley. I've got to say, there would be nothing different than I would do for my own daughter.
So how did you end up? Okay. These are questions that are now asked her because she's, perhaps Britney Spears' age, she's not a child anymore. How does it feel to know you've peaked? So that's a question we're going to return to in part 3. It's a question, what about youthful stars, people who really are exceptional or gifted or achieve quite good success in their school days? Is one way of looking at that is to say, well, your life has peaked. You're never going to have that kind of experience again. You're never going to be an all-state soccer player again. You're not going to become a professional soccer player. Like, how many people does that have? Basketball player? How many people does that happen to in the United States?
Right.
A handful of a handful. But that's not how she interpreted. She said, this is from the article that Mara Wilson wrote, I haven't peaked. For me, the narrative isn't a story about someone else's writing about me anymore. I can write it myself. So that's, I'm taking that as the bottom line of, and there's a direct connection, I think, between her parents, her father's interactions with her, and where you want that person to end up. I can write that story myself.
She's almost saying, what does that mean, peak? You guys think that the only enjoyment I get out of life is acting for you? It's like, there's a little bit more that I could do with my life here. So I'll go ahead and figure out what that is.
And in a way, again, we're not criticizing. Somehow somebody else is writing Britney Spears' story.
Yeah.
And it's the media who did it. Okay. And it's her father, perhaps. We're not making a legal judgment about all of that. And somehow her father was able to interact with her experience. And her experience wasn't the same as Britney Spears. She wasn't, wouldn't say sexualized in the same way Britney Spears was. But her father, for want of a better term, kept her feet on the ground. You got to go to regular public school. We could afford a separate bedroom, but you're just you and your sister are kind of going to live the same life. And, this is a job you have, and you should try and meet the requirements of the job, and we'll save the money. You're not going to be doing this forever, probably. And, I don't know what happened to her. You can go to college, you can go to whatever, but it's all effective therapies do one thing. They enhance self-efficacy. They make people feel more in control of their lives. And we've been talking about, what is natural life development and what is therapy. And in section one of all of this, I said, well, we've been transferring natural life processes, and we work for the life process program. And our whole regimen is in dealing with people that we enhance their fundamental abilities to deal with life, and that keeps them, gives them the best outcome mental health wise and addiction wise. And it's the best way of overcoming addiction or addiction problems. And in the broader sense, the policy sense, when I was discussing Mount Lundin, I'm saying things that enhance the basic structure of society are what the bulwarks that keep a society and its members functioning the best. Therapy, great therapy, isn't a fundamental part of society. It's what deals with where we failed to help people in the first place. So we could actually shift, I think, within good time to the third section of this.
Okay. So the question that you were kind of putting forward, that naturally came forward here, is there's an idea that people who are child stars put all their eggs in that basket, but then they grow up. And so what happens to them then? And I think the third section that we're going to do here is going to make, distinguish between a kind of lifestyle where you can think about life in a more balanced way than just, my stardom is everything, and versus relying on that to pave the way for you, even when it doesn't exist anymore.
And it's also about what her father and she seem to have done, Mara Wilson seemed to have done successfully. Having early success, that's good.
Mm.
Being successful is something positive. Having a skill, developing your talent, working on a purpose, even doing a stupid interview in Toronto on your birthday. Okay. You are marshaling your research. Someday you'll be 23 and 33 and 53 and 73, and having used your resources in a successful way, that's great. And the question we want to deal with in this third segment is how, as a parent or a helper of any kind, perhaps as a therapist, do you enable a person who's had those kinds of early successes, build on those successes as a fundamental core of their life going on?